Well, at a time of profound changes in Nepal, the collapse of the government, the army now in charge of law and order, and a simmering ground reality, larger questions do exist on how this all happened. These Gen Z protests, were they triggered by external factors? Was it entirely spontaneous? Manish Tewari now joins us, the senior Congress leader. Thanks, Manish, very much for being with us. You've written about this, you've tweeted about this as well. Given how close the Nepalese Prime Minister Oli was to China, could the events in Nepal indirectly, in your opinion, strain India-China relations amidst this recent Modi-Xi rapprochement?
Well, first of all, it is important, Vishnu, to dissimulate what really has been going on in South Asia since the July of 2024. So you had a situation in Bangladesh where, because of student protests, Sheikh Hasina had to flee the country. The army stepped in, and ultimately a gentleman who was an expatriate was brought in to take charge of Bangladesh. We are now seeing a similar situation repeat itself in Nepal, whereby all of a sudden you had these massive protests which have led to the resignation of Prime Minister Oli. You or had the almost lynching of former prime ministers, former finance minister, the wife of a former prime minister has succumbed to burn injuries. And there is chaos and anarchy all across Nepal. Now, in South Asia, there are challenges. There are challenges of unemployment. There are challenges of income inequality. There are other human developmental parameters, which obviously are not of the desired or expected level. To tap into this angst and to weaponize it in order to bring about a non-democratic regime change, this is not the first time that it is happening. It happened in 2010 and 11 in the Greater Middle East. You saw the Tahrir Square protests, which led to a regime change in Egypt. Mubarak's government was toppled. You saw the same thing play itself out in Tunisia. Other Middle Eastern states like Jordan, Bahrain, even Libya for that matter, were impacted by these street protests. So the use of social media, or the weaponization of social media, in order to tap into popular angst and then channelize that energy of the young people to bring about regime changes is not something new. In fact, it's been very well documented till now.
But who's done this? In your opinion, who's triggered this?
Well, that's a question, Vishnu, that we need to go into very deeply. Before pointing fingers at A, B, or Z, it's important to understand that this trend, Nepo kids, which really became the sine qua non of this upsurge in Nepal, was it organic, or was it being orchestrated by interests which have an inherent stake in instability in South Asia? It is just too pat that you have Bangladesh in 2024, you have Nepal in 2025. The obvious question is, who next?
Yeah. Manish, how important is it for India to draw lessons from our handling of the unrest in Bangladesh, which does have similarities, in order to avoid a potential domestic spillover? Perhaps India needs to emphasize dialogue over suppression in order to manage, what some are calling a generational discontent. I see it to be something beyond that.
Well, Vishnu, I entirely agree with you. Discontent is there for reasons which I had elaborated and enunciated earlier in rather great detail. There is restlessness among young people. There is a gap between their aspirations and what they are able to actualize. Now, are there vested interests or even foreign forces which are weaponizing this frustration? Or is this an organic, homegrown protest against, you can say, crony capitalism, against economic malgovernance, against corruption or illegal gratification by the political elites? These are questions which need to be gone into very deeply. But I entirely agree with you. Nepal is a sovereign country. Obviously, what happens in Nepal has an impact in India, as what happened in Bangladesh also had an impact in India. So we need to be extremely careful in handling the situation. At the moment, there seems to be the army which has taken charge, but how long the army will stay in charge is also an open-ended question. So we need to watch this situation carefully and segment it.
Right.
One is handling our relationship with Nepal, and the second is to look at the deeper implications of what is going on in South Asia and who stands to benefit from it.
So, on that point, there are various ways of looking at this. Oli's ouster could potentially benefit India by reducing Chinese leverage because he was close to China. However, if there is prolonged chaos in Nepal, that might create a vacuum that could enable potentially more external meddling, including from China, perhaps even Pakistan. I think my question to you is, there's a huge vacuum in Nepal right now. In international relations, somebody or the other fills that vacuum. How is that of particular concern for New Delhi?
Well, let me break your question down into a couple of subparts and try and answer it. First and foremost, I don't think India indulges in regime change by trying to tap into popular discontent in some neighboring country or the others. This is not our playbook, irrespective of whichever may be the government in office, because it has implications and it has a blowback. But obviously, on India's eastern border and on India's northeastern border, in the case of Bangladesh and Nepal, it has happened, and it has happened in quick succession. And under those circumstances, India, being the largest power in South Asia, we consider South Asia to be our eminent domain. We should be the ones who should be most worried and who should be most concerned, and must try and discern which are the forces which are responsible for it. Because in the case of Bangladesh, immediately after the student protests and the departure of Sheikh Hasina in rather ungraceful circumstances, you saw Pakistan-Bangladesh rapprochement also play itself out.
Yeah.
You also saw a greater Chinese role in Bangladesh. You saw very belligerent statements against India emanate from the current leadership in Bangladesh. Yes, we have attempted a reset. We have reached out to the leadership in Bangladesh and accepted the reality as it is. But things are not quite what they were before Sheikh Hasina's departure from Bangladesh. In the case of Nepal, we may have had these blips in our relationship. Somebody may have been perceived to be more closer to us. Somebody may lean towards the other side, primarily because Nepal has also had a very active Maoist movement, which ultimately led to the constitution of Nepal coming into incorporation and then getting operationalized. So, therefore, who are these forces who are interested? Is it Tahrir Square Redux?
Yeah.
Is it what happened in the Greater Middle East 15 years ago happening in South Asia? Why? What are the reasons? Who are the beneficiaries? There are no clear answers at this point, but these are the answers we must look for.
No, I agree with you. And, let's not forget about what happened in Sri Lanka a couple of years back. There was protests led by young people. Myanmar, in a different set of circumstances, is in churn. We've seen problems with Bangladesh and now Nepal. India at the center of all of this geographically. These are troubling times. And again, the larger questions do remain. Thanks very much, Manish, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Vishnu. Always a pleasure talking to you.